everybody, I'm DJ Sixsmith. I'm here with Carl Quintanilla. Cities of Success, Denver and Boulder, Thursday, April 11th, 10 p.m. Eastern. Carl, how are you?
I'm good. Episode 2, man.
Episode 2, the franchise rolls on.
Yes, exactly.
So second stop of the franchise, Denver and Boulder. Really fascinating episode. What was it like for you to go there? Because you have the personal connection. You grew up in Colorado, but both these cities at a really interesting point. What fascinated you the most about your experience?
You know, we felt really good about our Nashville episode, the premiere, the franchise, Cities of Success, and we were like, all right, what are other great examples of urban renewal, economic renewal in this country? And I know the team scoured lots of candidates all over the country. Denver Boulder just kind of pop. They kind of pop. I mean, you're talking about an area in Denver where population's up almost 20% in 10 years. The GDP of Boulder up 23% in 5 years. I mean, massive growth, huge inward migration, real estate's going crazy, big employers creating jobs, politics relatively steady, not everything perfect, but a lot of things clicking. And we thought this would be a good example to show how cities can do it right in what's obviously an uncertain and difficult time.
So many things you mentioned there. You grew up in Colorado. You went to the University of Colorado. What's it been like for you to see both these cities evolve over the past couple of decades?
So yeah, I was there in the late 80s, early 90s. At the time, you know, Denver kind of had two big pillars to stand on. There was aerospace and there was energy, maybe a little telecom in there as well. But it was really a narrow set of economic strengths. Now they've diversified way beyond that into life sciences and biotech and quantum computing and even nature wellness, which culturally was a big thing for areas like Boulder, but now becoming a real business because the dollars are there and the workforce is there. So it was kind of cool to see how the area is diversified, less prone to be jostled by economic cycles. And that's the kind of thing you want to see if your economy is going to outperform over the long term.
You interviewed a lot of really key business leaders in the area. Governor Polis is somebody who's very focused on the growth of these businesses. What do you think our CNBC audience will find interesting about that conversation?
You know, Polis is interesting. He was a businessman. I mean, multiple times, creating companies, founding companies, taking them public, selling them. So you got a guy in the governor's office who kind of understands what it's like to build a company from the ground up, like from employee number one, which is probably heartening to those who want to start a business in Colorado and Denver. The mayor as well, very in tune to social impact, did a lot of work with rural poor when coming out of school. So he brings a different kind of mindset to the city of Denver itself. But you know, a lot of states, politics are iffy. Either states are either hyper-growth, meaning hands-off, others are a little more hands-on. I think Denver would argue and Colorado would argue they got a better balance for things that, because you want to see the government lending a hand on both sides of that equation.
So both these economies, Denver and Boulder, have soared, but at the same time, there can be growing pains that comes with that. So what are the biggest challenges right now? Because it seems like both these cities are really at an inflection point.
Yeah, the challenges on this one were a little more acute than, say, they were for Nashville. The migrant issue's been huge for Denver. In fact, Denver's had the biggest influx of migrants per capita than any major city in the country, 40,000 migrants.
Wow.
I mean, there's no way a city of that size can absorb that many migrants and not have impact on social services and the city budget. So that was a big topic of conversation for the mayor in particular. The homeless, there's a homeless issue downtown. Real estate prices have gone through the roof, which makes making enough money to live there comfortably an issue. You know, we've met people, you know, who wish they could live in Denver. There's 300 days of sunshine a year. I mean, it's an amazing lifestyle. Yeah. But for some, it's just not economically feasible. So the city and the state are having to chip away at the migrant issue, the social safety net, the homeless issue, making sure that they can build as much multifamily housing as possible, as quickly as possible. Those are big challenges.
Well, one of the biggest strengths for these two cities is the natural food, organic food, the wellness sector. What's it been like to see those two cities grow in that department, and how did they become a leader in that area?
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. Boulder, especially, has had a long history of sort of being in tune with the nature and wellness industry. But back then, it really kind of wasn't an industry.
Yeah, it was a little small section of it.
It was very almost niche.
Yeah.
And I think what happened over the last 20 years is the money came in and the workforce came in to the degree where you could start to scale those kinds of businesses easier. And it's almost like the country's culture caught up with what was already happening in cities like Boulder long ago. and made them viable industries. So it's kind of cool to see Denver be a thought leader in that way. It kind of reminds me of how a lot of restaurant chains that we're familiar with that are nationwide, Chipotle, for example, kind of got their start in Denver. So that maturation, it's been cool to see what began small in Denver get reflected on a national basis.
You know, I was thinking a little bit about Nashville with this episode also because tech and VC money is starting to come into Denver and Boulder. You spoke to Dan Caruso, who's a big player in that field. How have they become hotbeds now in Denver and Boulder for tech and VC money?
You know, I think what's really interesting, and Dan Caruso, as you point out, big VC guy, the difference now is if you and I wanted to start a business and it was our dream to live in Denver, you know, before that would have been a nice dream, but would we have to bring people with us? Could we hire locally? Would there be enough funding guys locally who understood our business, who would want to give us capital? In the past, that was a tough challenge. Not so much anymore. Now, I think, you know, in fact, there's some entrepreneurs who are moving their businesses or their startups to Denver Boulder, not because the quality of life is so great, but because that's where the workers are that they want in-house. Whether that's on quantum computing or other parts of life sciences, that's completely 180 degrees from the way it was 20 years ago, where you're moving there not because it's beautiful, but because that's the locus of the industry that you want to be a part of.
So in addition to what we talked about, folks will learn about aerospace in both these cities. They'll learn about housing. What are some things that will surprise people when they tune into the episode?
What will surprise people is that Denver historically kind of had this, they were almost self-conscious about being a, quote, cow town, right? This idea that, yeah, we create kinds of great ideas for business, but eventually they're going to move on, right? They're going to move to LA, they're going to move to Chicago, they're going to move to DC or New York when they become big. That's not so much the case anymore. We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who are like, you can start a business, scale a business, and maintain a large business and never have to leave. And I think mentally for the city of Denver and Boulder, that's different. Like we're self-sustaining now. We don't need to rely on other cities for our entrepreneurs to graduate to. I thought that was cool.
Lastly, you're a Colorado guy. You're hanging out at the governor's mansion. A lot of cool experiences for this one. What was your favorite part of the whole experience shooting this one?
You know, I think it was just kind of being around town, covering some politics, but also covering the business people and just kind of absorbing the vibe, especially downtown. I consider myself a Denver native, and I just felt happy for sort of the town that I grew up in part, for kind of making it work. I think the modern definition of a city of success is not just going to be, oh, you know, what are the big employers we can draw, or can we create 5,000 jobs? It's going to be like doing all that and then handling whatever else comes at you, because that is sort of the pace of modern urban life in this country, and probably not going to change as long as you and I are around.
There you have it. That's Carl Quintanilla, Cities of Success, Denver and Boulder, Thursday, April 11, 10 p.m. Eastern. Carl, thanks a lot.
Thanks, DJ.